All right, welcome back. For those of you that have been following the podcast, I appreciate your support. It's been really cool to see people interact with Twitter, so I've been really excited to see the support throughout the coaching community. We have another great guest today in Lakeville South head coach Joe Janquart. So, Coach, how are we doing?
Fantastic. How are you, Brett?
I'm well, thank you. As you know, I know you mentioned, or you claim, maybe I'll have to test your knowledge, but you claim you've listened to a few of these other ones. You know that our first question is your coaching Wikipedia page. Now, I asked this to Damian Johnson, and the dude actually has a Wikipedia page, so it's a little bit different. But what's your coaching Wikipedia page? Where'd you play? Where have you coached? And what led you to Lakeville South?
Yeah, so starting out, I'm a Northeast Wisconsin guy. So born and raised in Marinette, Wisconsin, just north of Green Bay, about 50 minutes. So grew up with season tickets in Lambeau Field. So, a lot of listeners right now, you had Fadness on here, you had Omar on here. So a couple Packer guys, so which is fantastic. If we can get any more Packer blood in here, we call us transplants. And, I don't like to think I'm vacationing here anymore. I think I'm a pride and true Minnesotan now, though. So I've loved living here. The University of Minnesota kind of brought me here around 2000. And, during that time, I started out at the U of M, and I was going into broadcast journalism right away off the get-go, and had aspirations of being on ESPN and being a Sports Center journalist, broadcaster. And something kind of caught me early on in the going through my degree was, what am I doing for people? And, I didn't have the money, didn't have the cost, the means to become a doctor at any point. So I thought the next best thing would be to be a teacher. And so with the teacher, the benefits are you get a little bit more opportunities to give back and to work within the community and to hopefully get an opportunity to someday fulfill a dream of being a high school basketball coach. It's been the privilege of having two relatives who were high school coaches. My Aunt Judy Janquart, Stevens Point. She coached the 1981 SPASH team to a state championship. It actually had Kathy Bennett on the team, Dick Bennett's daughter. My uncle Ron Satch, England of Marinette Catholic Central, who's a longtime WISA state champ from the girls' side. Also a football coach over at the Menominee Maroons, running the single wing. And so I kind of had a chance as a young kid to look and to see how they modeled and ran their programs. And it kind of caught me. Like, I spent a lot of time in the gym, and it was an opportunity for me to say, hey, if I'm going to teach, hopefully I'm going to get a chance to maybe give back. So around 2000, 2001, I'm in school. I started to get a job at the Target Center in the guest services department. So I'm working at Target Center in the guest services department. Then I get a job at the Minnesota Twins in their guest services department, having the team lead lots of people and so forth. Again, so people opportunities coming along my way. And then in 2004, I took a coaching basketball class with Brian Fry. And Brian was coach of Burnsville at the time, Burnsville girls. He was transitioning in around De La Salle, I want to say, at the time as well. And I had a chance to be in there with the mayor of St. Paul and Matt McGuire, Alex Folke and Kevin Mertens. And so I didn't really know those guys all too well, but Alex Folke and I ended up getting a junior Wolves internship with the Minnesota Timberwolves, working for Kevin Wilson and Todd Landrum at the time. So this is around the 2004 window. And at that point too, so we're doing all the before the game stuff and running camps and getting some opportunities. And then an opportunity came along as I'm working for the Minnesota Twins. We have an opportunity that comes with one of the ushers was like, hey, do you have aspirations of coaching? And I said, absolutely. Because we've always had conversations about me wanting to be a coach someday and me being a teacher. So an opportunity came along. Henry Sibley was looking for a position. They were looking to fill their freshman position, and Coach Tom Dastovich over there. So 2005, I ended up coaching the freshman team at Henry Sibley, and helping out a little bit with the varsity. Trevor Mbakwe's walking the gym, Pete Leslie. We had a crew of Francis Bunju, Mo Hernandez. We can go on with some of our freshman crew. A lot of those kids were playing up too, and Chris Halverson. And so 2005, I'm coaching freshman basketball at Henry Sibley. And at the end of the year, ended up connecting back with Alex Folke, and we're coaching 43 hoops with Chris Carr, and getting some opportunities to go down to Texas and being part of the Kingwood Classic, and seeing all these guys around the country. And this is in 2006 now at this point, and you're like, whoa, what is going on with AAU? Like, this is a big deal. Like, we didn't really know anything about this, what we were getting into. 2006. And then so the next year we transitioned into Dasovich asked me to be part of the varsity staff and coaching junior varsity and varsity. So that following year I'm coaching JV, Henry Sibley. And then the 2 following years I was able to be just on the varsity assistant side of things at Henry Sibley. And that was kind of a crazy year. Some of the talent we had going through there really made us coaches look really darn good. And getting to coach alongside Coach Dasovich, Lernell James, Alex Folke. We can't put, I'd be remiss if I didn't say Ryan James in there as well. And working with his beautiful presence every single day, especially if your game really strong. So got around all these guys, and we're a bunch of gym rats and a bunch of junkies that just wanted to be in the gym. And all our guys at Henry Sibley just absolutely wanted to be in the gym. The success, and Dasovich would even admit to it, that a lot of our success was built to our open gyms and how competitive they were on a daily basis. I mean, you want to talk about like Pete Leslie, Noah Kaiser, Mike Brushewitz, Chris Halverson, Mo Hernandez, Jake Cruiser, Kayvon Martin. The list goes on in terms of all those guys that just wanted to be in the gym. And again, it made us coaches look really darn good. So, we go in that year, 17 wins, 21, 26, 27 wins. And you're feeling like, man, I'm getting really spoiled as a young coach to be in this situation where I'm an assistant coach under a top team in the state. And so, but then the reality is knowing that I got a long ways to go as a coach. And so after the 2009 season, I kind of got Gerard Corey reached out to me from North St. Paul, and he said, Joe, you're teaching in North St. Paul. Why does it make sense that you're coaching over at Sibley? And I thought to him, absolutely 100%. And so I was able to jump on staff with Gerard in the 2009-2010 season at North St. Paul, and really learned a lot about, I think that was one of the best things I did as a coach, was to be able to see it from a different lens. And to see how he operated and how he did things, especially from the defensive side, offensively, his movements and his actions. Those are still some of the things that we do today. So I was super, fortunate to work under Gerard for a couple of years, 3 years. And then after Gerard moved on, and I got that opportunity at North St. Paul. And so I coached there for 5 years as the head coach. One of the coolest moments, you think about having kids, the kids being the highlights of your life, getting that opportunity to be the head coach of a program was like, I mean, between getting the kids and getting in a teaching position, the high school position, basketball position was absolutely an incredible opportunity. So 5 years at North St. Paul, we go our first year, 3 wins. And then, we go 3, I think it's like 3, 10, 6, 24 wins, and then like 17. So, we started out and pretty slow and had to kind of build our foundation, and we got that thing going. And making a state tournament run was fantastic. And, you had Mark Klingsporn on here, and you think about getting the opportunity to go against him in a section final. Where we split during the season it was an incredible moment for our kids. Really cool, and something I hope they'll hang on to for a long time. Bunch of gym rats. And then an opportunity came along at Lakeville South. And so just finished up my 3rd year at Lakeville South. And we had an opportunity this past year to play for a state tournament. And then, we find out by John Malaya from the State High School League on Twitter before anybody, and you start getting texts. And if you listen to the Bears Den and Jeff with Flom, Dave Flom, sorry, not Jeff Flom, that was an old coworker from the Minnesota Twins. Uh, he talked about how gutting it was, and him being an elementary teacher, me being an elementary teacher, how we just sat at our desk. I found out it during my prep time, and how devastated I was and crushed. Cried for a long time, matter of fact.
That was actually my one of my next questions I want to talk about. I, I mentioned this when I talked to Fadness, because they were in the same situation, that you worked that hard and to not have that closure of having the section final. I mean, for us, it was a bummer. We had won our section the night before. I'm over at the high school, in our activities office, getting all of our information ready for get our rosters and stats and get our seed and stuff ready. And then boom, tweet comes in, and for about a couple hours, it was like kids were coming in and out of there crying and sad. And the silver line, I was like, well, at least we had our section final. So I can't even imagine, being a coach who's, you've put in your 3 years at Lakeville South, number 1 seed, 21 wins, and then to have that, not be able to have that closure, that section final game. And so how did you mentioned how you processed it as a coach. It was emotional for you. And you mentioned that it brought you to tears and you just kind of sat there and were devastated. But how did you address it with your kids? And how did you use that as a bigger life lesson?
You don't really know what to do next, and it's lots of question marks. And I had to step out of the classroom, and I had a heck of a team. And teaching elementary school is a little bit unique in that you're not there every day, and that's one of the tough parts of being an elementary teacher and coaching high school basketball. But quite often, fourth graders have the same needs that 12th graders needs, and it's, as Quinn Studer says, it's do you love me and can you teach? Those don't lie. Do you love me and can you teach? Can transfer. I stepped out for a while and tried to figure out a plan for what was going to happen. And it was, get to the high school, let's meet, let's talk, right after school. And I was able to accommodate with my teammates to get there, my class, teachers I teach with, to be able to get there right away after school and to meet with our kids, and just to explain to them, kind of just reflect a little bit on the season and how far we've came, and to not, it's something that nobody can take from us. And having not been in that position since 2011, especially the high school, and, and especially our seniors who put in everything. And, everybody's talking right now about how we honor and look back at everything that the seniors have given us. That's a big part of it, because they're not going to get that opportunity again. But we took some pictures. We talked a little bit, and then just kind of left it at that. We didn't cut down the nets like Flom did, even though they went 28-0. But we did cherish and discuss a little bit and just talked. Just kept it real.
That's a huge role that we have as high school coaches, right? Is that, yeah, we're a coach, we want to win games, but also being that big picture, helping them understand the big picture, and, just reflecting and learning. And it's tough, man. I can't imagine having to deal with that. Like I said, you had, made it there with North St. Paul, and then wanting to get back, had the potential to get back to Lakeville South. But we'll transition a little bit more into the X's and O's here. I don't want to hit at too many of the emotions. I'm sure it still stings. It still stings me when I think about it, not being able to have that chance to play in the state tournament. So I imagine it's probably even worse for you not having a section final. So let's talk defense. As we texted beforehand, you mentioned that as humble as you are, and as much as you admittedly don't like to pump yourself up, I've heard from other coaches that you're a really good defensive coach. You mentioned that that's your strength. So we're going to go into that. Last Thursday, actually, Josh Ortman from Buffalo and I talked a lot about offense. So we'll make this a little bit more defensive focused today. And so, again, you play in a really talented conference, a lot of Division I players, top-ranked, top 10 teams in Class 4A in your conference. I think all 7 of your losses, right, were in conference play. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so what are some strategies that you have? And we'll start with ball screen defense. So what are some strategies, or what are your different coverages that you use when defending ball screens?
So, defending ball screens is, we like to, there's a lot of ways, and I have some Wisconsin blood, and unfortunately, Bull Ryan and Gardo and how they defend ball screens is they don't really change how they defend ball screens. They really chase over the top of things and then bump off from the backside. But, I like to consider us like a hybrid, defense. Especially, I don't like to say that we're 100% gap or 100% on the line, up the line. I don't think we're in that era anymore. And, from a ball screen standpoint, we're really, really, really personnel driven. in terms of who we're playing. And that basically comes down to our scout in terms of how do we want to get the ball to the offensive player? Do we want to push them away from the basket? Do you think there's some vulnerabilities among some of our players that we're going against? Do we think they can't shoot? So are we going to go one under? Are we going to go two under? And then, so that a lot of that came from Gerard Corey too, and talking a little bit about how he would defend ball screens. Again, we talk about one under, two under. Are we hard hedging? Are we trapping? Are we pushing them away? We're not like Edina and how Joe defends and icing a lot of things. So I think I don't like to say like we do things one way. Heck, I mean, last year too, we played a lot of 3-2, and we played a lot of Chad Fleischman 3-2 defense, a lot of zone too. And so I like I said, I like to consider us like a hybrid defense. And we want to it's basically played off of the offensive player. Sometimes we have to play Farmington. They run some of their continuity offense. You've got to be able to work on that quite often. And, they've changed up a little bit of how they do things, but it's not really one concrete answer. But we've had success in defending ball screens because, the thing about it is we're in a copycat league right now where with so many opportunities and resources that are in front of us, we can take and find information. You'd be surprised that when we watch Huddle, we share within our league film is how many teams are running some of the same things and the same plays and the same actions even now. So again, it just comes down to personnel.
So you mentioned Film Exchange. Our league has Film Exchange too, which is really, it's a life saver, right? As a coach, my wife has never been happier than when we have Film Exchange. We don't have to go out on the road 2 or 3 nights a week. I don't know if you still get out on the road and scout. So what are some things you're looking at when you watch an opponent's film that's going to adjust your decision or help solidify your decision on how you're guarding them off of ball screens?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, in terms of it saved my marriage.
Yep.
I mean, Carl has absolutely saved my marriage. Somebody talked about what is the one word that you do as a high school coach, and it's sacrifice. Sacrifice, and I would say balance. Having 2 kids at home, my wife works for the Timberwolves, and it is incredibly difficult, to balance everything. And like we do it to a fault. I see Kyle Brown put his blog together the other day and talked about how you take all this information. Johnny Ted Carey would probably say the same thing. Is you take all this information out and you try to dissect it into pinpoint exactly what you want to do, and like it's super, super difficult. And so like with Huddle, film share has been almost, Brett, I will tell you this though, it's gotten to the point where I'm exhausted watching film, and you talk about, I remember Bryce Tesdall was talking about watching Eastview 22 times before they played in the state tournament.
I heard that clip too.
And then at the end of the day, I'm talking to Mike Keating from St. Thomas, and they're talking about how Johnny Tower watched it for 15 minutes. They watched 15 minutes of film. And so all we want is to process. We know so much about another team that we have to dissect it down to bare at the max 15 minutes. And so that's really difficult. But finding what are the common trends in terms of what the teams are doing it's been beneficial. But almost to like sometimes you're watching Lakeville North over and over and over again. You're seeing the same 30 actions that Ox is running, or you have to watch Eastview run their 100 sets. It can be nauseating, and you're selective, and you basically at the end of the day you're looking at actions. What specific action are they? 3 to 5 actions every game, and hopefully you can solidify that in your breakdown each day in practice.
So we'll wrap up ball screen defense here. Last question on that. You talked about blitzing and you talked about hard hedge or 1 under, 2 under. What are the other 3 guys doing? So who, in a perfect situation, who's taking the role guy in your guys' ball screen coverage?
It depends. I mean, it depends. What are the threats typically? And it's based on spacing. If it's whether 1 or 2 away, is it that guy that's 2 away? Is he tagging low and transitioning out? And then what happens with our closeouts when we have those guys in those certain scenarios? So again, it just comes down to, and we'll do it differently every single time. I'm not going to say like, those are things that we do practice in the summer as well too. We try to balance out our workouts. So Brett, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's one way or the other because I'd be lying to you. So
Fair enough. Off-ball screens. Specifically, how are you defending staggered screens?
Yeah, staggered. We go. So we like to go over the first section. We go under the first, the first screen, then we go over, and then we're a screener. We teach our guys. If our guy's a screener, we're a helper. And if a guy's a cutter, it's a cutter. We don't like to have, there are nervous cutters out there, Brett, like as you like to say, but we like to take care of our cutters as they are. But we like to go over, and then sometimes we can switch that second one depending. But unless if we got a 6'9", 270-pound kid like a Riley Mallman in there, we don't always want them matched up on Elamine out there, running around. So sometimes we'll do that too, is we'll switch the second. But again, we like to go under the first, and we like to chase over it, like we like to do with a lot of off the ball screens too. And it's personnel based, so we teach a lot of off the ball stuff as well. And listen to some other guys into. We work pretty much in the summer, and we work a lot of our fundamentals in our first probably 20 minutes of practice and teaching what do we do on down screens, what do we do on flare screens, what do we do on certain actions.
How much do you guys switch?
Typically, again, having a Mallman in there, 6'9", 280-pound kid, we can switch sometimes 1 through 4 and kind of keeping him, even though he can cover a ton of ground. We can switch 1 through 4. If we're guard heavy, sometimes 1 through 5. But it does take some practice, and it does take a lot of communication.
How do you, and I could ask this question to 20 coaches, and I'd probably get 20 different answers from the guys who are going straight 5-on-5 and stopping, from the guys that are breakdown screen 2-on-0, then go 3-on-0 and a 4-on-0. So how do you teach if it's ball screens, off ball screens? What's your dread? I mean, it's going to be multiple ways, I'm sure. It's not one size fits all for you. But what are the ways that you're generally speaking teaching defending screens?
We do a lot of it in shell. I mean, I think we build up and we'll scaffold it sometimes where we're picking a lot of 3-on-3 groups. Sometimes it's nice having 18, and you can have, 3-on-3-on-3 on one court, or you can have 3-on-3-on-3 on another court. And so just working those specific actions and lots of small-sided games. And then we like to transfer it into some shell. But we do play shell, and we play it live based off of the actions that we just worked on in our breakdown. Early in the season, if we will walk through a few things and play some dummy D or some dummy action, I guess, offensively with it. And then I guess that maybe I've gone away with that a little bit more. We've gotten away from that, where we go a little bit more live and small-sided, and then we'll transfer it to what does it look like when we had one more guy? Do we need to put in our fifth? In terms of, do we need to put in our post in? Is he the only guy that's coming out in ball screening? So typically with our bigs and so forth too. So again, it's small-sided, and then we transfer it into our shell.
Post defense, the game's changing. Post defense really in 2020 might just be how are you guarding the roll guy with. That's what, a lot of people are running some variation. If it's continuity ball screen, if it's spread ball screen, or if it's just a big maybe in the dunker spot. Well, how do you teach post defense, and how much time now do you spend maybe this year versus what you would have done when you were an assistant with Henry Sibley or with North St. Paul?
Well, that's a thing. Henry Sibley, we had Jake Cruiser, 7 feet. Mike Brushewicz was 6'8", 6'9". Chris Halverson, 6'8", 6'9". You throw in a Dancing Bear and a Marcus Garcia. You throw in, I'm trying to think of the other guys. But then you transfer to North St. Paul, and you got a Jake Weber. He's our biggest guy at 6'6", and you're going against a Javon Walker and a Jarvis Omersa. You got to defend it. And a lot of times what we were doing is we were 3-quartering a lot of it, and we're jumping back and filling up and pressing up as much as we can and walling up. And then we teach that with our guards as well too. And then you transfer into into Lakeville South, and we got some post presence now, and a lot of times you can just sit behind a guy and just say, good luck. And that's really tough. It's really fascinating to talk about, post as it is anyways. Like, we are one of the rare true kind of 4-out 1-in teams around, because we have a true throwback post who can score in the pinch, and he can score on the block too. So we've got some versatility in how we score offensively as well. But A lot of times it's 3/4. And then a lot of times too, it's like, all right, you got a Steven Crawl, and he's Steven. If you're a junior, is he only going left shoulder? And then you watch him in the film, and you see his ability to score in both directions. You've got to be creative about how you're forcing him one way to his offhand, and that's a Mark Klingsporn. Mark Klingsporn talked incredibly about it. You listen to his scouts and how much a guy scouts. Boy, he don't like film share very much. Mark will admit to that. He loves to give you on the grind still to this day, and he knows that if you play in that section, you're going to be scouted probably 10 times a year. But they talk about left shoulder, right shoulder constantly. That's something I took from him and Coach Corey too.
What shot are you looking to take away? If you take away one shot, obviously, I mean breakaway layups, right? But getting a little bit more within a half court set, what are you looking to take away, and then what are you looking to concede, or are willing to concede, I should say?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people would say is we're trying to give them that tough mid-range shot, and we think we defended the arc pretty well this year. I think we gave up, I think it was like 30% from three-point line this year. Which is pretty good. And, we're trying to make, we're not the bad boys by any stretch of the imagination, but we want to make tough contested twos by any means, as much as we possibly can.
Ball side corner. The philosophy in that is changing. I heard Jacobson from UNI, when I first took over down in Omaha, so about 7 or 8 years ago, I went down to a Nike clinic there. The first guy ever I really heard, maybe I was behind in that, talking about not helping off a ball side corner. What is your guys' philosophy in that? Are you staying home? Are you stunting? Or are you willing to help on ball side corner off of penetration?
Personnel based, 100%. And what's happening with that ball? Who's got the ball? Is he going to his left? What have we seen in film? We can watch that action 22 times and see what he does. Can he score off going to his left? And I think that's the craziest thing right now is kids can't finish with their left hand. So a lot of times when it's on the left side, if slot to corner, we might just have him slide and stay on his hip the entire time and just take that corner away. And a lot of, Brett, in some of your podcasts too, a lot of guys love that corner three. So, it's the easiest shot in the game, supposedly. I'm not too much of an analytics guy, but maybe it is. And I'd be curious to know more information about it. But again, it's personnel based. And I've watched a lot of film, and even like how Novak does it in terms of veering guys down and bringing a big over. If you got Chet Holmgren down there, you can bring him over, great. But then what happens with the dump off guy? What happens with the guy two behind too? That's in the trail, and that's easy to pivot out of that and to move the basketball. Good teams. So personnel based, 100%.
I'm going to lose my assistants here, and hopefully I keep them coaching with me, but I think they might tune out after I ask this question. We are an anti-zone defense in Princeton. We are man, we press, just kind of what we've done. And we haven't ran zone probably since maybe my first year, and I was just throwing whatever against the wall to see what would stick, and we'd run with it. So talk about your 3-2 zone. I'd be remiss. You brought it up. We haven't talked zone on, I think, 15 other episodes. So talk to me about your zone defense with your 3-2, what some of the roles are and some of the responsibilities that you have. I should say we talked with Fadness at Austin with his zone. But what are some of the responsibilities that you have or your rules that you have with your guys in your 3-2?
Well, they're never going to name a gym after me or a court like Fadness, and I know how much he hates that too. But anyways, the 3-2, we ran a ton of it last year, and we like to call it our dirty zone because it's really tricky and it puts guys in position. And a lot of times, and you look at it, and you look at teams, is a lot of teams have 1 to 2 kids that aren't really good at shooting the basketball. So you don't even need to guard them. Or if they're in a position where they're not going to score, like that's great on us. So you can always be a little bit late. And I don't like to think we played a ton of zone this year. This was more exclusive to last year and really selective based off personnel. Again, everything is personnel driven, but we would kind of take our 2 posts and we try to stretch those guys out to the corners. Sometimes it's really tougher, but we like to balance it out into a 2-3. So our 3-2 transition to 2-3 in corner. When the ball's in the middle, we kind of think about who is our nearest post that can step to him. And then we drop off, our wings drop to the corners. So basically what we're doing is we're creating as much length as we possibly can, filling in gaps, playing a little more gap oriented as well, and allowing a kid to shoot that we think that can't shoot. That's the gist of it without boring anybody.
Are you part of the McDonald family and we don't know about it? Because Cambridge, we play twice a year, runs their matchup zone. Hibbing runs a lot of 1-2-2 in our section. Are you sure deep down you don't have a little McDonald in you?
No, I'm not, I mean, between Rhett and all those guys, I mean, Tesla, it is unbelievable. I'm not half as good looking as those guys, nor think I'd ever be. So it's funny too, because our league don't run a lot of zone at all. I mean, it's crazy to think about it. And it's funny listening to Tower Talk. They don't get zoned at all either. And they spend time on it, and you guys trying to score 100 points a game. That is there a reason you don't want to go zone, Brett, ever?
We don't go zone. We don't want team. I mean, really, I just don't want team. I want to be good at one thing defensively. And it does, right? I mean, to play us for now, I got, I know Coach Fensky in Hermantown always listens to the podcast. Isaac Hughes, actually, he was the girls coach at Princeton. He actually officiated my wedding, and we played them in the section final this past year. And he listens to the podcast every time he walks his kid. So I'm sure he's going to – maybe he's me instituting zone. I know he's not a zone guy either. But, yeah, obviously without a shot clock, we want to keep teams sped up. We think zone just gives teams an opportunity that they could hold it against us. And, our defense is based off of offense, and we're willing to give up. Philosophically, we're willing to give up a couple open layups to keep the game moving. We tell our guys a lot of the times, don't fall, don't contest late, let's fight. We want to keep the game moving. Where we get into trouble is where, teams, are able to slow us down by running a zone on their end. They're able to get back on defense, but when we start following kid teams. And so kind of that's more the same philosophy is we don't want to run zone, because I wouldn't be very good at teaching it. I'm just a man guy for my skill set, but also we just want to kind of keep the game moving. We think, we might get beat off the dribble because we got some guys who maybe aren't as good off the bounce, but we want to keep the game moving. We don't want guys to be able to, pass it around the perimeter, and we want to kind of speed teams up and force that tempo and force that pace to 80 possession game or so each way. So yeah, without sharing too much, and we get zoned. I mean, we get zoned a little bit. Like I said, Cambridge runs a really good matchup zone. Bill Bauman, who's at North Branch forever, the assistant coach. I know he's done this past year, was his last year assisting there. Kind of instituted that, and they got really good at that. Hibbing runs a good 1-2-2. And then we saw Austin in the state tournament. I told Chris this. It was like, wow, I don't know anything about basketball with how his defense was so good. And so if you can run a good zone, man, it's really hard to score against. But yeah, I mean, I don't sit there and, put my nose in the air at anyone running zone. I mean, I think that if you're good at it, I mean, it can be really tough. Jim Boeheim's had a ton of success, obviously, at Syracuse, winning national championship with it. So just for me, like I said, it comes down to our tempo. We're willing to give up an open layup here or there, right? We don't want us Olay guys to the rim every single possession. And it looked like that my first few years. But, recently it's, if the kid gets an open layup, that's fine. Just let's keep the game moving. So, we
just want to use it, Brett, as a diversion, more or less, and to change up the game. If there's something we can change the dichotomy of the game, if, I think we were 4th in 4A in terms of points given up. And a lot of people say, I remember talking vividly to, I think it was the Owatonna news guy talking about looking at our points scored versus points given up. And it really looks like we're holding the basketball, because I think we've gave up there were 20, don't quote me on this, but I think 18 to 20 teams that we held under 50 points this year. And it wasn't that we were holding the ball in long possessions. And are we predicated on ball movement offensively and paint touches? And absolutely offensively. And like you said, it's a result of our defenses as a result of how well we move the ball offensively. Absolutely 100%. But also we have to think about our personnel too, in terms of who we have. Can we run, or do we need to play a little bit more? And I think it's important to know that I come from the mindset that to really win in March, you got to play half court offense. And you got to defend in the half court because teams are too good.
Just a quick scan here. Yeah, I think you guys are 4th. I see Tartan at 51.5, Irondale's in there at 55.3, Eastridge 54.2, and then, you guys at 55.6 in Class 4A. So, yeah, it's clearly you're good at it. When I've reached out to various coaches, hey, who should I have on offense? Who should I have on defense? More than one person said, got to get you on, had to have Klingsparn on for defense. And so obviously, you know what you're doing on the defensive end. That's a lot of defensive talk, and especially for a guy like me who's more of an offensive guy. Like, and we're trying to score, 85 points a game. And I know Minnehaha way, way, way more talented than us, but we still led Class 3A in points per game. Obviously, I know our competition is a little bit different, but you can't take away that we led Class 3A in points per game. So with no state tournament, I think that puts us at the top. We scored more points than everyone else. But let's talk program building. I know that's something you've done a really good job of. And so just talk about when you take over a program, what some of your first steps are and what you're looking to achieve maybe in that first month or two.
Sure. So teaching elementary school in North St. Paul, I was able to work with a few of the kids already. I had been, I taught Good News Capago since he was in first grade in North St. Paul, and to have him at the high school was an absolute joy. And to think about getting to know family members and so forth, and to be, just immersed within the community as well. When that program took off, we developed. It's 100% relationships, really, is what it is. I had the privilege of being, an assistant for 3 years. So, between elementary teaching in the district and having already got to know the kids, and being what everybody at that point is, the best person in the world, like Coach Klingsparn would say, is the assistant coach. Everybody loves you. So you develop strong relationships. I think it's important that you keep that same mindset even as the head coach. I think a lot of times in interviews, are we going to, even at the elementary school level or a middle school, high school, is what is your relationship with your kids? And do you want to get to the point where you're best friends and buddy? I think it's a point where it's, if I'm going to bring you down, I'm going to pick you back up really quickly. And I'm going to make you feel like $1 million. And sometimes as you get older and you get more cynical, sometimes you don't ever, you got to just keep reminding yourself not to lose the love and the passion for having fun. Brian Schnettler, I talked to him the other day, and it was just like, don't ever lose sight of having fun. And we were talking to a bunch of guys who had been around the programs for, let's say, roughly 15 years. And just because we've immersed ourselves with so much, there's so much out there, social media wise. And, we talked about Kyle Brown, we talked about John Kerry, and how much has been immersed and around there. Building a program needs to be fun. And you talk about our kids at Lakeville South this year. Something that's been a joy is every single kid has a nickname that has been brought forth by each other. And that's something that's part of it's a huge culture piece. It's relationships. It's putting expectations within the program as well, too, about what we can do. It's not rules. It's not mandates, but these are things that we should embed in terms of what we do on a daily basis. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing is consistency. When you've got turnover and constant turnover within coaching staffs, it can be difficult. And can it take a little bit of time to get there? And we always need to remind ourselves of having a little bit of patience too, and stepping back. I think
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I would just say, it's just finding the balance between what you do at home, how you teach, and how you coach.
What are some strategies that you use with your program and building relationships, especially coming from North St. Paul to Lakeville South? You didn't get to maybe see all those kids come up through the Youth Basketball Association. So you've been there now for 3 years. So what are some strategies that you've used to build those relationships with your student athletes?
Don't teach elementary school is number one. All right. Don't teach elementary school on a late release. So I teach on the north side of Lakeville, and boy, my 3 years there were teaching fourth grade were absolutely incredible. It's really painstaking to walk into the gym about 4:10 every single day and to know, like, all right, and I've got, there are tremendous relationships that I have with Troy Surgeon and Dan Colseth and the rest of our staff at South, but because they've gotten everything going. We've been in the weight room already. We may or may not have watched film, and giving them, even now in the 3 years and the trust that we have, the relationship that we built with those two guys right now is they may have watched film already, and then we're hitting the court. So don't teach elementary school where you got to get in there as late as time permits. Teach middle school or be embedded in the high school. So making that transition next year. In film, we do a lot of, we do a lot of talking, a lot of conversing. There's opportunities in the weight room to converse and to talk. Reaching out to the kids, we can text them and see how they're doing as much as we possibly can. Try to get out and go to some of their AAU games as well. And to know that, we can't come to everyone, just like we can't come to every single youth organization that there is, whether it's tournament or everything else. And that's something that I've explained to all our youth coaches is that, when we have our coaches meeting in the fall, it's like, I can't come to everything. I'd love to come to one or two of your practices, and hopefully I can do that. But at the end of the day, let's have constant communication with the coaches throughout the year. I send some check-ins with the youth coaches to see how they're doing throughout the year. No, I may or may not get back to you on things, but how, every year through the process, we improve something, whether that's whether it's improving what we do at our youth levels to what we need to improve at our high school levels. And I think when you first start, your core should be your high school, your main group. And then how do you stretch yourself out with the sophomore group, the freshman group, and then how does your lower levels look? And I think you get those opportunities in the summer as well, working in camps, doing workouts. Those are some really, really some core time to really work with the youth.
Good transition into player and roster evaluation. I know I'm throwing this on you. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but you brought it up, and I think it's a good one that intrigues me at a school where we don't cut. We have 9A. We have some 9B games. We have, depending on the year, 8 to 15 B or sophomore games. Then we have a JV varsity. And so how do you evaluate your teams, and how do you make that? Because I know you've had some young kids that have been really successful for you in your years at Lakeville South, and just from watching and following stats and box scores from afar. So how do you make that determination that a young player is ready for that big jump to the varsity level?
Yeah, it's $1 million question, isn't it? I think we've got to figure out how are they going to fit, and we've got to do a heck of a job of anticipating how they're going to grow within our system and what's going to be the best for everybody involved. Sometimes we don't always make the best decision, and you haven't seen the development like you'd like to. So, hindsight's 2020. And at that point, you're thinking, all right, this is going to work well going forward. And you have to look at some of the other moving pieces of the other kids as well, and how they're going to fit into some of their roles, I guess, if you want to call them. It's doing your best based off of you looking at rosters. And a lot of times when you look at rosters, you can't just look at this specific year. You've got to do your best to anticipate how it's going to look down the line. But at the end of the day, kids change, kids grow, John Lure growth level. You just never know what's going to happen. So you got to do your best. And at the end of the day, it's doing what's best for your program, and hoping it works. Sometimes the best is to dealing with some of the kids who may have had those chances is giving them opportunities to deal with adversity. Adversity is something that we appreciate, and it's something that I teach with my fourth graders every single day, that we should take challenges as opportunities every single day. And when there's adversity with some of our younger kids, it's opportunities for them. And then, sometimes, you've got to wait and see how they do and give kids opportunities. So if you have let's see how successful they are at one level, and maybe we can move them later in the year. Sometimes that can present itself too. I don't like to err so much on that side of things, but.
So it's a $1 million question. I mean, every coach has played a young kid up. So do you have like a rough gray area? Maybe that's not a good way to phrase it, but your line where it's like, we'll move a kid up to varsity if they're seventh guy or better, or a starter or better. Do you have that, or does it just depend on the situation?
Right. We want our kids to play as much basketball as possible. We have the ability to play 3 halves. So if we think that they're, so if we have a kid that thinks, if you have a number of guys that think they should play varsity, we want to give them opportunities on the JV level. If they're non-senior players, give them opportunity at the JV level and see how they continue we want them to kind of dominate in that area before we're giving them opportunities for varsity playing time. Yeah, it's a gray area, and we're not really black and white with it. And just like we're personalized learning for every kid in my fourth grade class, we've got to make sometimes those difficult decisions at the high school to see if they're 7, 8, and 9, let's say, well, 7, 8, 9, we think it's best that they play JV, or we think it's best that they're playing B squad, and then maybe getting opportunity at the varsity level. And sometimes we want to give those opportunities out. I was talking to a coach the other day he was talking about how he had some younger kids that he knew were going to be better than some of the older kids. And he just never gave them shot because he was adamant that these older kids were just going to be fine through the whole year. We tried quite a bit this year at South, and we were looking to fill kind of one position and giving multitude of guys opportunities. And, we learned a lot about that. And at the end of the day, we felt confident about what we did going forward, and it made us a better team.
Last question here, and don't get yourself in any hot water in Lakeville South how you answer this. But, Lakeville's a very affluent school district. You probably have a lot of parents in your community that are in the basketball community that are very successful. Probably a lot of 6-figure salaries with, if not, 7-figure salaries of people, parents in your basketball program. So what are some of the positives or the struggles or the challenges, I should say, challenges and rewards or benefits of coaching in a district where it is affluent and you do have a lot of parents who probably have a high level of professional success?
I think it's, our parents are tremendous.
Awesome.
They're absolutely fantastic. I mean, in terms of wanting to help and support, we've got our parent support group. Our booster club does a tremendous job in giving the kids opportunities. We have quite a few, I think we've got way more realistic parents than unrealistic. And sometimes we've got to be able to work. And I think Nate Sanderson does an unbelievable job in talking about how we collaborate around working with parents. I mean, Nate knows way more about this than I do, and I think it's something that, they want to know. I think the parents, they want to know that, do you love my son? Do you support what he does? Can you bottle him up and tell him you love him every single day? And can you give him opportunities for failure too? And sometimes, sometimes they don't always, I guess, parents don't always see everything. They don't get a chance to see what goes on in practice. They don't always get to see all the times we've conversed with other kids through text, or we picked up the phone call and talked to them. And sometimes what parents only see is the games. And sometimes there's knee-jerk reactions of how we responded to maybe a turnover, or how we responded to when a kid came out of the game. And it doesn't tell the whole picture. But I do think sometimes I'm pretty cognizant of how I present myself consciously, which I don't know if that's like a great thing, Brett, or if it's something that I've just it's a learned behavior over the years. And, if I'm high-fiving a kid coming off the bench, if I'm not high-fiving the kid, I think we're always under the microscope, whether it's Lakeville South parents or opposing coaches. Opposing teams, in terms of, how we are viewed in everything that we do. How we, one of my faults I used to be a yeller when I first started growing up. And I would just try to dictate as much as I could because I had no clue what I was doing. Like, I would try to manage everything on the court. And as I've grown through the profession, 15 years later, I find myself just being a better, more analytical coach and managing the game and letting the kids go through opportunities for failure and success. So that's kind of it in a roundabout answer, a little bit, relationships.
That's really good stuff, Coach. I know you said before we got on here, well, and I'm pretty humble. I don't really like talking to myself, but there's a lot of good information that coaches can take from this that listen through this. I'm really appreciative that you came on. Last thing, I do just want to know, are you ready for the Jordan Love era next year, or do you got your jersey, or where are you at with that?
Wow. I wonder, see, Omar, I wonder what Omar and Fadness are smiling right now, if they're laughing. Well, Rogers is supposed to retire today. So you guys are going to hear this on Monday. Supposedly he's supposed to retire today, just so you guys know. And then we got the Jordan Love era. So, yeah. Well, I wasn't too happy in 2005 when Rogers was drafted, and I wasn't too happy now. So we'll let the rest just kind of play its cards. And I know a lot less than Brian Gutekunst, so I'll shut my mouth and let it play out because I'm a Packers fan.
I'm gonna double down on this. How did you feel after the NFL draft? Because there's no other sports, so like that NFL draft, which gets way too much coverage in the first place.
Yeah.
Got
I mean,
10 times more coverage than it normally is. How did you feel constantly seeing D and F grades throughout the week after the draft? How did that feel for your psyche and your fandom?
Well, when I listened to about 2 weeks worth of podcasts related to the NFL draft, and all we were worried about was what wide receiver we were going to take and when we can move up to get Justin Jefferson. And thanks Vikings for doing that. That's fantastic. Draft grades will figure themselves out in 3 years. So we'll see. If Matt LaFleur has his hand in this, I'm hoping it's going to work out, and I'm pretty optimistic kind of guy that I am. So I'll cast judgment in a few years.
All right, Coach. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Brett. Thank you so much.